This is Jacob, and you are watching Is My Shit Tight? And ladies and gentlemen, it's very tight. It's very tight indeed. It's so tight, it's squeaking. Well, Devo, holy shit, man. I think it was 78. 78. So, my friend Ted knew a friend at Max's Kansas City, the booking agent. And we were working in radio at the time in New York City. So, we had the ins. We got to go to clubs for free and all that. So he got a call from the booker at Max's saying, listen, man, David Bowie is coming tonight. There's this band he's coming to see from Akron, Ohio. I don't even know if he even knew the name of the band. We didn't. I don't remember now if we knew who they were, but we knew David Bowie was going to be there. Now, David Bowie was our god then for many people. David Bowie's the most important artist in my history. And the loss of David Bowie to the music world is an extraordinary loss. I mean, he was the fucking Beethoven of rock music. There's the Beatles and there's David Bowie, and they are the two most creative musical units in the second half of the 20th century. David Bowie's music is so ridiculously. Anyway, so Bowie's coming to Max's. So we hop in the car and we go down. And we get in there, and Max's is not a big place. And here's David Bowie and David Byrne of the Talking Heads. Now remember, 1978, the Talking Heads, 77, they came out with their first album. So people knew Psycho Killer, Take Me to the River. They already had two big hits. And Talking Heads came out of the punk thing. They really did. Talking Heads came out of the CBGB school, but they had a couple of big commercial hits. And so here is David Bowie and David Byrne at a table, drinking beer after beer after they drink about a dozen beers. And here we are. So I guess I'm 21. And I'm in the room with David Bowie. Now, David Bowie sucks all of the air out of the room when you're there. You have no idea. It's like the Queen of fucking England is sitting next to you. I have an analogy. We went to go see Wings Across America in Madison Square Garden. And here I am. My best friend, his father was the ticket manager at Madison Square Garden. So he went in and he picked the two finest seats in the garden. The low seats, double 0 and 01. And here's the orchestra. Here's the orchestra, and the loge was the first seats on the first balcony, and we were right there. And here's the orchestra, and there's the stage, and and the stage is right there. I mean, it's just incredible seats. You could just put your arms on the brass rail and watch. And then 20,000 people are circling, and they're all hub, 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 hub. And then you heard hub, 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 and you saw people, all these necks, all these people, all looking at a spot in the orchestra, all looking. And then the volume went down. It's like, what the fuck? And then it's like quiet. And everybody's staring at one person, and that was Jackie Onassis. And we had better seats than Jackie O sitting up there. And there was Jackie. So it was incredible. It all went like, Jackie Onassis, Jack, look. 20,000 people staring at her in a hush. And then the volume came up, but it was just that moment where she stopped 20,000 people in their tracks just by sitting there. And so that's what it felt like in Max's with David Bowie. He's right the fuck there. I remember walking by him and just kind of like touching him as I walked by. I was like, oh my God, it's David. So you knew something big was happening. Something huge is happening. Enter Devo. Oh, God. Fuck. First, they showed their Jocko Homo video, their first video, and then these motherfuckers came running out in radiation suits through the stage and jumped up on stage and bam! Kicked my rock and roll ass. I've never seen anything like them. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, there was nothing like Devo before or after.
Can you explain the feeling of when they first...
Well, their instruments were these... They looked like guitars that had been ripped apart and hit with chainsaws and put back together. And they had these radiation suits which got ripped off them. And their music was angular, and it's really hard to explain what the fuck Devo was in 78. There was nothing like them. They started in 1972, I think. They started a long time before. But they were this fully formed thing And there was nothing musically like them. Forget about Wicked. I mean, that was a big hit. It's just that other stuff, uncontrollable urge and swelling, itching brain, and just, they were shocking. And visceral energy. They just bounced, and they had chops, and the drummer was just fucking ridiculous. And the songs were just, so there was nothing like him. It was this cross between rock and synth, and it was new wave. I remember Devo, if there's anything that would classify that whole genre of music, it was fucking Devo. Devo changed it all, man. And there's Oingo Boingo, the closest thing to Devo at the time, you know? So there was, so it changed my life. Devo just, we walked out of there and said, that's the fucking future. But then there was a wave coming. They called it the new wave for a reason. There was a wave coming, man. From 1978 to 1981, music changed forever. And I would dare say that there's never been, in 4 years, that kind of change. In those 4 years, you got Devo, you got the Ramones, you got the Clash, you got the Sex Pistols. I mean, it was just, you had Devo. I mean, you had the Talking Heads. You had Blondie. You had Television. You had Richard Hell and the Voidoids. You had The Damned. I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
What's this year span?
78 to 81. Remember, by the time you got to 81, you're into Howard Jones. I mean, it changed so fast. But in those early days, Echo and the Bunnymen, the Psychedelic Furs, I mean, band after band after band. Maybe 1980 was the greatest year of all time in music. But then it laid the path for everything. Electronic dance music, Brian Eno, all this stuff. I mean, it was the best Roxy Music albums with Brian Ferry. Remember, Brian Eno came out of Roxy Music, and Brian Eno went on to produce U2 and the Talking Heads, and you name it. And the 3 albums with David Bowie, which are considered the greatest, the Berlin Trilogy. All of this was happening in those late 70s, early 80s. By the time you got to the mid-80s, I mean, bands that were cult items were now superstars. Look at the Psychedelic Furs, man. That first album of theirs is this deep, kind of brooding, this strange, very gothic kind of music with this big muscular dude playing the saxophone, which is nothing that you really saw in punk bands. And then they went, just 5 years later, they're Pretty in Pink and they're pop superstars. But back in the day, man. So those were very important days, and that changed everything for me. Forget about classic rock. Classic rock is dinosaur music, ladies and gentlemen. Anybody who listens to classic rock anymore, I don't know where the hell their heads are. I cannot stand it. Now I play the drums. I've been playing the drums for only about 4 years, and I have to play because I have to play all this music that I really don't like because it's fun on the drums. It's a whole different thing. There are no notes, no chords. The drums are very exciting. So the world changed, the world. And then I heard sequencers. Then Joy Division, New Order, again, New Order. Fuck me, man, Joy Division. Ladies and gentlemen, the first Joy Division album, Unknown Pleasures, is perhaps the finest debut album ever created. I know people look at, but believe me, go on YouTube and you'll see Henry Rollins. Henry Rollins, the coolest man on earth, Black Flag, and he'll tell you, there's a little blip on YouTube where he's talking about Joy Division, Unknown Pleasures, and he's saying what I'm saying, this might be the greatest album ever made. I remember the story of Joy Division was Ian Curtis, their lead singer. Love will tear us apart again. And he committed suicide at 20 years old. He was on the cusp of their first American tour. Love will tear us apart was blowing up. And then they had She Lost Control, which is another incredible record. And then he committed suicide on the eve of their first American tour. And what happens? Joy Division turns into New Order, a New Order. Fuck me. Again, you said moments when things change. First time I heard remember back then you didn't know records. You had to go and buy it. You didn't know what was on it. Nobody played it. There was no YouTube. There was nothing. So I remember buying The Beach, the 12-inch single, which looked like a big computer floppy disk. And I remember going home, putting that on the turntable, and then hearing, ba, 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 ba. How does it feel when your heart grows cold, all those sequences and that. So that was a whole nother thing, New Order changed my life. This is Jacob, and you are watching Is My Shit Tight? And ladies and gentlemen, it's very tight. It's very tight indeed. It's so tight, it's squeaking. Remember, hit the subscribe button.